Okay, we'll call the meeting in order. December 23rd, 2003, Newman City Council. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing for the invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow our heads, please. As Christmas is almost upon us, we thank our armed forces for the freedoms we enjoy and wish them continued safety and success around the world. And for those of us here this evening, let us give thanks for what we have, and may everyone have a joyous holiday and a healthy and prosperous new year. Amen.
Amen.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Parker.
Present.
Marquez. Martinez. Reed.
Present.
Mayor Fantasia.
Present. Declaration of conflicts of interest. Don't believe we have any this evening. Ceremonial matters. None this evening. Communications from staff. I believe Ernie has something this evening.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I do have an informational item. It has been determined that the main cause of the flooding at Highway 33 in Inyo, which is at the southwest corner, which is the Bigelow Chevrolet corner, is not being caused by the pump station that was installed at Lucas Ranch number 2, nor by the tulies in the drain ditch, nor by failure to clean leaves and debris off the grate. It is being caused by partial collapse of the the storm drain line underneath the highway. Last Friday evening, Public Works crews were out on stormwater patrol. They noticed that close to midnight, most of the areas had drained down except for that corner. It was draining rather slowly. The following morning on Saturday, we had Dave's Drain put a camera down into the pipe, and we discovered that it's partially collapsed. We reported it to Caltrans. They were out this morning running a jet back through there. All they were able to flush out was a chunk of concrete. They indicated that they were going to be having contract the service out as soon as they can. In the meantime, we provided Mr. Bigelow with 30 sandbags at his disposal, so in case the water does tend to rise there, keep it out of his building. So that was the cause of that flooding problem.
Just so that we understand, Caltrans is going to come in and do the necessary repairs there?
That is correct, Councilman. That is their highway, their right-of-way, their drain inlet, so they're responsible.
I'm glad that we have some resolve in knowing what the problem actually is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you. Did you tell Mr. Bigelow about this?
Yes, we did.
I bet he's happy.
Oh, yes, he was.
Okay. Thank you, Ernie.
For the time.
We're happy.
Yes, yes.
Any other communications? None at this time. Item 8, items from the public, non-agenda items. If anybody has anything that isn't on the posted agenda, now's the time to come forward. Seeing no one. Items from the public, agenda items. When the item becomes before the public here, please try to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Number 9, public hearings. We have none. Number 10, consent calendar. Item A, approval of warrants. Item B, approval of minutes of December 9, 2003 regular meeting. Have some direction, please.
Move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item 11, regular business. Item A, consider purchase of ASI aeration system. Ready?
Yes, in your agenda packet, you'll find a memorandum from myself to the city manager. We have received a bid quote from IFG Services from Bakersfield for the purchase of 3 10-horsepower motor blowers and 30 bubble diffusion stationary aeration grids that will be installed in aeration basin number 1 at our wastewater treatment plant. The cost, including materials and freight and installation, is $40,282. They're also offering an extended guarantee for annual cost of $5,789.70, which would provide materials, workmanship, and labor to replace any defective parts in the system. But staff recommendation is to decline this extended warranty offer. We find that not too much can go wrong with those units.
I find it odd that they want to charge us for an extended warranty now.
Yes. The bid quote doesn't provide for the cost of electrical connections or modifications and other material for the work necessary to accommodate the installation of these units, and we're asking for an additional $2,500 to provide the additional labor and material costs, which could consist of the plugs and cables and accessories as such. E&M Electric from the local electrical contractor here has done the work previously, and they're ready to do the necessary work. And we have also had this bid item reviewed by our consulting engineer, David Stringfield, and he expresses concurrence with the recommendation. Any questions you may have regarding this?
Ernie, as far as the warranty, I don't believe we had any problems with them so far that are out there, have we?
No, we haven't.
I didn't think so.
Now, is this similar to the system we just put in a couple years ago?
Yes, sir. It's the same system. All we're doing is adding additional aeration.
And how long is the standard warranty?
It's 1 year.
1 year, okay. And we haven't any problems?
No,
in a
we
couple,
haven't
3
had
years?
any problems.
A couple of considerations here that are rather compelling for our going ahead with this. Number one, it provides some alternative or backup should we lose a machine or two or have to take them offline for service or repair. But more importantly, we can now have the ability to increase our aeration and knock that BOD down significantly and hopefully get the regional board off our back on that count.
Right.
Yeah, I actually, when considering the ASI purchase, looking at the complete agenda package, I happen to take it upon myself to go out there to the wastewater treatment plant and speak with Lance
Yes.
the other day, knowing that this is a huge issue for us. This is one of the things, one of the tools that we're trying to use to combat some of those sanctions that we're currently looking at. That's what I'm understanding.
Exactly right.
Well, we know from having had their product that it's a good product.
Yes.
Do we know how much it's been saving us in energy costs? Because that was one of the reasons why when David brought this particular product to us in presentation by ASI, we knew that it was going to save us money. I don't recall us really doing figures. I know it's saving us, but...
I don't have the figures at hand before me, but I do know that during the high use summer months, they were from $7,000 to $8,000 prior to that, and our bills were reduced down to about $3,500.
So cutting it almost in half.
Yes.
Yeah.
If there's no more questions for Ernie, can we have some direction?
Motion to approve purchase the aeration system and insulation at price quoted.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item B, consider proposals for Corolla Engineering's task orders number 3 and 4, services for wastewater influent and treatment plant plan.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I have included a copy of the, at least everything except the appendices of the newly produced final on technical memorandum number 3, which is the regulatory review. This is the work that is covered by this task number 3, or work order number 3. They were compelled to proceed and get it done timely to be able to respond timely as requested by, or as pressed for in the notice of violation. You may read over this material at your leisure. It is really quite informative. It's a good statement of where we are at this point right now. The summary is rather succinct. Now, in respect to these two work orders that they're that they have submitted and we're requesting approval on, thanks to Ernie's sharp eye, and by going back through some of the billings that occurred over about a year and a half and former work orders, I think what happened was that when they switched from the Waller Creek office to the Fresno office, they were having a little difficulty picking up the billing records without stumbling. So Ernie remembered a $16,200 bill, work order, that he felt, after reading these things, duplicated the work.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went around and around with David Stringfield. He says, by gosh, you know, I think we're right. And so there's some overlap there. So on the other hand, some of the other work that was authorized under this previous work order simply went over. It simply cost them more because of the complications they encountered. So we negotiated a split, and it's been reduced by about $8,200. So you can cross out the number on the one there, number 3. And, it'll be,
Give me an exact reference point.
I will, right. But I got to find it first.
Task order 3, is that the one?
Okay. That's the one. And if you'll look at get past the letter and go to task order number 3, second page. Compensation, cross off 38,300. It reads to 30,000. 30,300. That's approximate. We may be able to do more, slightly more, or slightly less. He is reviewing it, but we agreed in general to reduce it by that amount.
Now,
Ted, go ahead.
I wanted to ask, the 60,200, isn't that the amount that we approved, Ernie, recently, where we were going back in and getting a sampling of the BLD, where we were trying to figure out why our BLD was so high? Is that's that amount? Under task 3 as well, scope of services, it was my understanding upon visiting out there at the wastewater treatment plant that we could kind of handle a couple of these tasks that they have
Those are already
outlined.
done.
Those are the ones that you're speaking of, they're
It's
done.
all done.
So that includes this cost savings you just alluded to
Yes.
then? Okay, wonderful. Now, I guess maybe I might be jumping the gun, but the task order 4, I understand, is what's going to help us as well with some of the compliance issues that we're seeking. Is that a fundamental viewpoint?
That is correct, Councilman. Task order number 4, what it does is it goes back to task 1, the original $89,000 agreement that we entered into. And that's so that they can complete the report, the project report. They end up finalizing the regulatory requirements, the alternative analysis, they'll be finalizing that, the cost estimate, and determine the preliminary financial impacts. They're going to prepare the description for the CEQA documentation. They're going to revise the schedule, and of course now it's going to also allow for the 6 meetings with city staff and wastewater task force committee, and also 1 meeting with the regional board to present their recommendations from the facility plan.
Okay.
So this is just adding on to the original task order
Of what
number
we
1.
initiated
Mhm.
and John brought to our attention.
And then task 2 within this same task order number 4 is this is where we really need them. They're going to have the formal response to our notice of violation that we received in August. That includes a tentative revised monitoring and reporting program for the treatment. It's going to include the alternate deadlines for compliance dates, because they really pushed a bunch of deadlines on us. And they're too near in the future, and we need additional time. They're going to provide legal opinions on the requirements to enact the ordinance having to do with water softeners for both residential and commercial. They're going to comment on the best practices treatment methods. They're going to comment on requirements for all the field work that they want us to do out there for pH meters, lab reports. I think that they wanted us to do something like $130,000 worth of lab testing. They're going to comment on the sampling requirements for the influent, effluent, the pond, the A-line drain, the water supply, groundwater, and they're going to justify any proposed changes for constituents that to be tested, including the sample types and frequencies, how often we have to do the testing. And they're also going to comment on the hydrogeological report and groundwater monitoring work plan tasks, and the proposed alternate dates for the submittal of the work plan. And they're going to obtain the technical opinion and recommendations for this task from Kenneth Schmidt and Associates. They're the ones who did the groundwater study here for our area. So that's going to be task 2, and the budget for task 1 was $25,000. The budget for task 2 is $20,000, which includes the subconsultant costs. And they're saying that task order number 4 won't exceed $45,000 without prior authorization from our board.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of figuratively, Ernie, bring this down to like a bottom line issue, and just to bring my colleagues in line. We initiated a study for the expansion of our wastewater treatment plant that this body approved for roughly almost $90,000.
That's correct.
This is an additional study, and so it's equating, I guess the 93,500 minus 8,200 is the actual amount that we're looking at fully for this staff report. Am I correct in that assertion? I'm just going to the staff report with the proposed motion of approval to the second page. It says cost, 93,500, and what I'm presuming is that we subtract 8,200 from that amount is of the overall cost.
8,000.
8,000?
Right.
Okay. So then my bottom line question is, we're looking at roughly, from Carrillo Engineers, about $180,000, $175,000 study to be able to tell us how we're going to be able to proceed with the enormous task of expanding our wastewater treatment plant. I want to know, is this pretty much going to summarize our outlay and costs for those studies, or are we going to be looking at some?
Right?
Yes.
All right. So you have 40,200 under task 3, or work order number 3, and we have 45,000 under number 4. So that totals 85,200. Do you want to get a total on all this work that proceeds now? And to put it in very simple terms, this is picking up where we were brought up abruptly by the regional board with a
Yes.
notice of violation, shifting direction and going forward from here.
And the way that I view it is, because of those sanctions, and mind you, this is a state agency that we're working to comply with, it's doubled our costs in a practical view of studies that we were already initiating. And I'm kind of hoping that our purpose of doing this will bring us in line that we may be able to offset any further additional studies. In other words, I know that I don't know that exactly, but I want to get staff's opinion on that. Is that what we're trying to hunker down with?
Councilman Parker, I don't know at this point. I think it would be a little overly optimistic of me to say that we can, or maybe even I shouldn't even say that we can't. But I can assure you the idea here is to save every penny we can. The thing that Lance mentioned, that you brought up, he was on the right track. I mean, this was quite difficult to understand because of all these different buildings and work orders occurred, and that was the right idea. I feel good about Ernie and them keeping their eyes open. But taking that same idea as we approach these, we'll do everything we can to reduce their costs. Everything that we can do out there in the field, we will do it, to save them having to do it at greater cost.
That's understood for Carrillo. And I'm just, I'm trying to be optimistic and hopeful because I know what we're dealing with. And I'm appreciative of the effort that the mayor's made and staff has made, going down to Fresno now as opposed to where we were originally under guidance. And, it's just that my hope that we're spending all this money in studies that we can move forward from it. The ASI aeration we just approved to try to combat basically the growing pains that we have now.
Take special note of those timelines that are embodied in these proposals.
And by no means am I the expert. That's why I went out to the wastewater treatment plant to get a little more knowledge. So thank you. Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you, Ernie. If there's no more questions, can we have some direction?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we authorize staff to accept the proposals for the Carrillo Engineers Task Force orders number 3 and 4 that define the scope of the services for the wastewater treatment plant project. And I would scope it under the said amount that was combined by the city manager of $85,200. Was that the limit?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 3-0. Item C, consider possible modifications to animal control services.
This, Mr. Mayor and Council, this is an informational thing tonight. We have a situation that's a bit of a predicament. We're trying to figure out what's the best way to go. I can't bring myself to be optimistic and run celebrating up and down the street that our governor having restored the BLF. I will believe that when I see it. There are 2 lawsuits filed to attempt to prevent that from happening. It may be a long time before we see what direction we're going to be taking with that. In the meantime, the general fund continues to decline. So I feel we really, really need to take a careful look at everything we possibly can to try to keep general fund costs down, yet provide a sound and reasonable level of service. This particular situation is one where we may, because of the circumstances that existed in the past and the difficulties that may be encountered in trying to find somebody really that fits this job on a part-time basis, whether we can work out our circumstances with sharing with Gustine, where we are probably taking a pretty good lion's share of the cost when you add everything in. And can we rely upon Gustine long term? There are just a lot of things that kind of go into this. But what I asked the chief to do was do a little analysis. And he did, and he's done a good job here. He's listed actually 5 options that include one of which is stay as we are, basically. And 4 others, one being to hire a position as part-time only, independent of Gustine. The problem there is, what he points out, is that we may not be able to find a good person, on a part-time basis. That's really a very special thing. Part-time means they're not going to be paid a full-time wage. Who has that capability that's going to be in a situation where they are willing and able to work part-time only. So that might be really difficult. That would be a good, reasonable cost, and it would be only about $12,000 a year. But it would be entirely on the city, and we'd have the management and overhead costs to go with it. The third option was overtime for a sworn officer, or officers, plural. Well, what he points out is that with officers working 4 days on and 4 days off, we may be able to have officers cover these duties, but it's expensive because at $30 an hour, if you really want to isolate what we're doing here on a cost accounting basis, which includes benefits, it's kind of stiff. At 20 hours a week, this would be $2,400 a month, or $29,000 a year. That is not a cheaper alternative at all. The option 4 would be contract with Stanislaus County for those services. This was done before. We had an animal control officer, as he points out, for 4 hours a week. Well, at 4 hours a week, we simply weren't satisfied with that level of service, but we could increase the hours. The current cost for patrol service is 71 cents per minute, or $42.60 per hour. That's $3,400 a month, for example, at 20 hours per week. Well, maybe we don't need 20 hours per week, or $41,000 a year. If we had 4 hours a week before, maybe two and a half times that, going to 10 hours a week, would be entirely sufficient and provide a satisfactory level of service. I don't know. I don't have the ability to compare what it was like at 4 hours a week. But nevertheless, this plus the $7,500 per year we're currently paying the county for picking up housing, putting down, and disposing of animals. The county also collects dog license fees in addition to that charge. We would not have the cost of an animal control truck, gas, or maintenance, and insurance. I spoke with the director, or the chief spoke with the director of Stanislaus Animal Control, and he was told that his agency could handle up to 20 hours a week. And suggested if we cut it down to 10 hours a week, our total services would cost $20,500, which is a very comparable cost to what it has been. Option 5, I'll have officers handle animal control calls. This is the least expensive, using existing staff. If there are other problems, it pulls officers off of their normal patrol duties, sticks another diversionary thing on their docket, their duty docket. This would be probably least effective, as they'd have to work it into their enforcement duties, and the issues raised with transporting animals and humans in the same vehicle becomes a very awkward thing to handle. The union may have issues over working conditions. Chief does not recommend that option. I'm not trying to steal your thunder here, Chief. I would say something about it. Do you want, we kind of fill in here, I think. What's your professional take?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I'll kind of answer any kind of questions you may have regarding this, but I can assure you that basically when the hours that we had from the county prior to that, on the 4 hours, we were not getting the job done. We were still having packs of animals, and with 4 hours, plus some of that was drive time for them to be able to get here and there if they weren't in our area at that point. And we just weren't having the animals picked up. Just kind of give you an idea, I think that basically we were getting somewhere in the neighborhood of about we had about 200 animals, I think it was, first year that we had Jackie, and prior to that with the county we had about 80 animals for the whole year. And just in 2000, up to date, up to December 11th of this year, we've had 130 cats and 133 dogs. It's 266 animals just this year. So if you figure out that per month, that's quite a few animals that are going through. And these are the ones that are actually getting picked up and taken out. These are not the numbers also the ones that are actually taken home by their owners. That number's small, but it would also add to that. And then the year prior to that, in 2002, we had 243. So animals, total animals, cats and dogs. So there's quite a few animals that we're talking about that are getting captured under the current circumstances that we have now. And I'm not sure what level of service we would be getting if we went back to the county. We were only doing it 4 hours with 10 hours a week. I'm sure that their service would be better, but I'm not sure it would be comparable to what we currently have.
How about if we make it in a cost analysis? Because when I look at your report.
Right.
If we went to the county versus the full-time employment situation that we currently have.
Correct.
On a cost-sharing basis, it doesn't look like it's really significant even if we cut it to the 10 hours a week. I see it costing us $20,448 versus $20,400. Is that a adequate comparison?
Yes.
It's really a wash. when
It's
it comes
kind
to
of
cost.
a wash in a way. We do get some of that money back from Gustine. It currently is right now where it's not complete wash with Gustine. We do take kind of a hit for holidays and vacation and those kind of issues too.
Well, let me ask this question, since we're really talking about level of service,
Yes.
which is something that I know David has spoke of, and I know in his absence, Bob Martinez spoke of, that we really don't want our citizens to feel an impact of. What was the situation when the previous animal control officer was out for 85 days? I mean, what happened during that course of time, because we were lacking the service for almost 3 months?
We were kind of picking up the slack on that as far as the officers handling those kind of calls. And then also we were taxing Public Works because they were having to take care of our shelter and feeding our animals. We
So
also
the rest of the
saw,
city employees kind of
plus our contract with the county, we're also having them coming out additional more time because they were the animals that were being picked up. So there was some time, and I didn't even figure in the cost of Public Works time being involved in that. Ernie was just very kind to be able to donate them to us. So plus the factor that we have with Gustine that's not in here is actually the use of their truck. As you know, we don't have our own animal control truck, plus fuel, which was not figured into this report. So you're probably talking, and our contract with them is basically, it's kind of a cohesive thing where they can bring their animals up here to Newman, and then the Stanislaus County will take them from here on into their facility. And then, but the cost of their animals going down goes to Gustine. So that might kind of bring it back up to about the same number that we're looking at if we went for 10 hours with the county and their truck and their gas and things. One of the things I really want to make sure that one of the things I know we're in trouble at this point is we're looking at some budget problems. I agree that I don't think the budget is as rosy as it has been in the past. I think that we're going to have to be looking at some services, and I can just tell you that I don't want to come back in June and find that we have no money for a full-time person and take them away from a job that they currently have right now.
Well, I guess that's the real hard question, Chief.
Right. If I'm going to have to look at alternatives, I want to look at those things now and not have to readdress it.
Okay, because that's the real issue I was going to bring up. The real hard question comes down to whether or not, when our funding sources are really shortchanged, budget by budget, what are we going to be looking at? And I think one of the things that we've tried to hold true to is the security of our employees here.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I brought this one up in particular is because I knew that it was going to be vacated
Mm-hmm.
and we were losing an employee for the very reason that you just stated.
Mm-hmm.
Would hate to have somebody brought in and under your police department budget, when you're looking at it, what could you least cut? What would be your biggest impact, where you've had some coverage before with the officers?
Correct.
With Public Works. I would hate to have somebody in that position. That's why I thought about looking at it and perhaps seeing some options like this. I guess it comes down to the factor of when we may or may not have the money, we'll look at it again then. What you're presupposing in this report is going ahead and filling the position as a full-time employee.
Right. We have gone forward at this point to put an eligibility list together. We've actually got 4 good candidates at this point that we're looking at. But again, I would not want to move forward if we're not going to be able to sustain this position into the new year, new budget year.
Was there any, David, maybe you had some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would like to make every effort to hire a full-time position along with renegotiating our contract with Gustine to see if they can come up with a little bit more of this, to make it 50-50 percentage. So as it is, it's still, I think, cheaper than to have the county for 20 hours. And I think we all saw several years ago, before we had an animal control officer, what the situation. There were a lot of dogs loose, a lot of problems with dogs that were loose, bites and things like that. And it's really turned itself around. And I don't think I haven't heard any complaints. And I'm sure you probably get a few police department, but I see the point of, now I would say if we thought we could do it next year to continue this, I'd say, yeah, go right ahead now and hire someone. But maybe we could take a look at having a short, I don't know, what's the contract length of the county? Can you have a short-term contract, month, 2 months, by the month or whatever?
I think you can do whatever you want because it's kind of on
Yeah.
an hourly basis.
And maybe do this until June or our budget, and then go for the, if we can afford it, go for the full-time person that we can keep. Because I agree, you don't want to hire someone and have to lay them off in 6 months.
You know, another thing that I've begun to realize is there may be other causes for the way that the number of dogs and animals that were encountered before. Let me ask you a question. Chief, you say that the county licenses. Why don't we license out here?
Because Margaret and I actually did a study and we found it wasn't really cost effective for us to go after the licensing between the manpower and things. What's that?
Who keeps the money?
The county does. That's also reflected in our contract with them as far as putting the animals down and holding the animals for 7 days.
We could put a surcharge on there. We could increase it.
We could research that and we go over
And
our.
if we did, it could be a potential cost recovery. And it might reduce the number of unlicensed dogs running around. What happens when you pick up a licensed dog?
It goes to our shelter and then we notify the owner and then we do a release, but it's $30 per the release on a pickup.
And what happens to an unlicensed dog?
They go directly over to the county and then they get licensed
Think
and
that
vaccinated.
the distance over to where you have to go to get a license has something to do with the number of unlicensed dogs?
The county does 2 a year since they are getting the money. They do they survey the city. They send people out that go out and find these, go door to door on these licensing of the animals. Plus, when they come back, when they get unlicensed dogs, they don't get released until the dog is licensed and vaccinated and such before they get back out to their owner.
How do you know who to notify?
They usually contact us looking for their dog. So.
Oh, we become the locator, huh?
Right.
They conduct a clinic in town, they do the license.
A licensed clinic, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what he was mentioning.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there may be some opportunities for
Well, if you
recovery.
that's an opportunity, I guess. But I don't know how much that charge would be. So.
I don't want to get us too far off the point of what we are kind of discussing as well, whether or not we hire a full-time person for the position or whether we contract some of the services to the county. I kind of like David's suggestion only because I think it's smart and I kind of think it's prudent. Even you yourself, Chief, said you would hate to hire someone for 6 months.
Correct.
Then certainly your budget is looked. The reason why I say that, having served on the state policy committee for public safety, I watched a number of my colleagues throughout the state having to give police officers pink slips. One of the cities that first comes to mind is Fremont, which is a pretty well-endowed city when you talk about where it's located on the peninsula of the Silicon Valley. You know, the high income there that's grossed in terms of their housing and things of that nature. And then a lot of counterparts in Southern California have been faced directly with loss of services and loss of jobs. And I kept thinking to myself, you know, as a smaller town, we're somewhat insulated by our conservatism, but at some point we're really going to have to ante up when the funding and the monies just aren't there. And having looked at the fact that Margaret so eloquently told us how our general funds of $800,000 or so could be dwindled down to roughly $200,000 in, you know, less than half the time it took to accumulate that amount of money. You know, that's a big consideration, I think, that we really have to consider when we're having these kind of discussions. I'm kind of inclined to lean towards what you've said, David. And
One thing I did forget to mention was the fact that our animal control officer was also our code enforcement officer. And
I know you're big on that.
Well, you have to have one. And so somewhere we have to find someone to do that job. And I think she did a fine job on that. So That's just another consideration, I think. But as all these options, I think we can probably eliminate 2, 3, and 5 right now. And then let's see if we can get some more information on maybe talking with Gustine on maybe upping their share of this.
That's a good idea.
And the other one would be to, I don't think that we should take less than 20 hours. You know, if we do contract with the county, I think 20 hours should be, because that's about what it really takes. Maybe our control officer didn't work that full 20 hours picking up animals, but there was no travel time involved in that. And I think they charge us for their travel time, don't they, on the county?
They did, but that may be something I could negotiate again with them.
Okay.
I just want to point out that at 20 hours, we're talking over the amount that we were paying for a full-time person. Is that something that we're wanting to
Well,
move forward on?
That's it too, but,
Okay.
Well, it'd be one of the advantages of contract is you can go up or down in the number of hours.
That's true.
Which,
yeah.
you start low, see how it works, and if not, it tells us what we're facing, and we have the option then to either go up with the hours at more cost or go back to something else. But I think what Councilman Reed mentions here about take a good hard look before we jump, and it probably makes sense to sit down with Gustine and see where they're heading, see what we can work out, and that might shed some light on, I mean, a better light on how viable the continuation with them will be. For all we know, we've not brought them in on this, our discussions here. They could be collapsing, they could be looking forward to enhancing it, I don't know. We need to have some dialogue with them.
Now, I agree with my colleagues. I don't want to fill this position and have to lay them off in 3 months. I think we should do our homework a little more, talk to Gustine, talk to the county, get some more figures, and if we have to go with the county till June, till the fiscal year, I think we should do it.
I think we probably have a little bit of leeway. I don't think the dog problem is quite as bad in the wintertime as it is in the summer, so we probably wouldn't be completely out of hand if we had to wait a month or so before we get this.
Is there some direction you want to give me on starting this up, a tentative date?
Starting what
Working with the county
We
as far
ought
as
to
getting
say no
something?
more than 30 days, I think, you know, by
Well,
the,
Can
we've been without
we
one
need to
now.
move
for-
quickly to get back to you with a more viable
Yeah.
option.
Okay.
Till our next meeting, we should.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think by the next meeting, we should have something to.
We've been getting
concrete.
by, Chief, right? I mean, how long has Jackie been gone?
She's been gone since the 5th of December.
So we've been maintaining.
Look,
In the
the weather's
meantime-
been bad, dogs haven't been out, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, with all the rain, maybe
Haven't had to
they'll
dispatch any
stay
dogs, so
inside.
That's
That's
a
true.
good thing, and
It is.
you know that terminology when I say dispatching.
Yes, I do, and I won't go any further.
Okay, I guess we're clear on that, then we'll get a little more information for the next meeting,
Okay.
and hopefully we'll make a decision then.
So
So-
we've eliminated down to 2 options,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
pretty much.
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
Mike.
Chief.
Appreciate you
you,
coming
Chief.
out here. Mike's
Item-
taking time out from his vacation to come up here for us here.
That's why he makes the big bucks.
Oh, yeah.
Item 12, items from the city manager. Jim?
Mayor and council, members of the audience, the YOLO Street Sidewalk Project, the engineer and public works staff and director of community development have conspired to complete this project. The engineer is doing the estimates and the scope of work, and it is now embodied as in the future budget as a capital improvement project. Total cost of which is $154,500 for the project as it's constituted today. That includes engineering, sidewalk construction, reconstruction of the ramps, which are illegal, and provides the alley crossing, et cetera, et cetera. We talked briefly about the BLF restoration. I just want to remind you specifically that there have been two lawsuits moved forward. One actually filed, the other allegedly filed, trying to block that. I would like to be optimistic, but I'm not going to let myself believe it until I see it, the DLF restoration. Even with DLF restoration, it will be, we could expect a continuation of the status quo as it was before it was removed, which is continuous decline of the general fund and erosion of state subventions in general. So I'm trying to be perfectly clear that we can expect ongoing budget difficulties. We must look more conservatively at everything we do. SBC is being required to relocate a whole bunch of underground facilities and even place some additional aerial facilities on Highway 33 in the vicinity of the Sherman Parkway at Jensen Road, that construction. What has occurred is that apparently some thought that they could use the railroad right away. SBC will not use the railroad right away. There are ongoing costs to the tune of $10,000 to $30,000 a year for parallel or longitudinal right-of-ways in the railroad right-of-way. Maybe PG&E does it all the time. Maybe that's one of the reasons they're going back. They went bankrupt. But SBC refuses to get hooked into parallel right-of-ways and the cost of them, even if they were able to negotiate them. So they're forced to go over on the west side. They have underground facilities that need to be relocated all the way from Yellow almost to Stir Road. That will be, they have trunk toll cables, they have fiber optics, they have major copper conduits in there, affected by the depth, structural depth of the highway construction. When they widen, they are coming right on top of those underground conduits, pipe facilities. So they first thought that they had this major relocation. We talked and have discussed the idea of hopefully coming up with some way to bridge all those underground facilities with concrete slab or steel plate segments that would make that cover be part of the structural section of the roadway and yet protect those facilities without going through this extreme cost of relocating, extreme cost to somebody. I was afraid to ask whether they intended to bear that or not because I knew that was probably not going to be the case. The situation is one where they're looking at it and they have asked us to help them acquire short-term or emergency right-of-way along the west side, an easement, such as an easement. So right now we're confirming, I need to be absolutely sure that there is no space for them to go with temporary overhead facilities between the curb, let's say, or berm at the edge of the traveled way and the right-of-way as it exists now. There's contradiction. Some of the sections in the plan show that there is. Yet the word is that they don't have any, that the states, that they're paving right up to the right-of-way. I've not seen that in the plans that we have. So we're getting a hold of the right-of-way record maps to be absolutely certain and we'll know which way to go. They would, any work that we did would be at the developer's expense, I believe, because it would be part of his relocation requirements. They would probably argue that. That's why I'm trying to simplify it as much as I can and make it a no-cost item. The industrial park, Ernie, you can help me out here. I'm getting hoarse. Grants request.
The industrial park project, Hem Street pretty much has been completed. It's been paved over. The only thing that they haven't done is raised the water valves and manholes to street grade level. The problems that we're having are out at the L Street and the new industrial parkway, the new street. Most of the underground utilities are in, the sewer, storm, water, the water service connections, the sewer laterals. Excuse me. The basins have been excavated. The only thing that they were trying to do now was install the pump stations, the cones, the wet wells. They were having, they're experiencing a lot of problems with the water table in that area. So they've dug some pits and they're pumping it out. We've had quite a bit of rain. There's a lot of muck and mire. There's a lake out there where they've excavated down to subgrade the extension of L Street all the way to the Miller Ditch. So it's very wet. It's going to be quite some time before it dries out. And of course, you have to allow rain days to the contractor for his contract because he wasn't able to work. So that time is going to be extended anyway. What they are requesting is that they be able to winterize and pull out for the winter and come back into the spring and complete the job. Two ways of looking at it. If we do that, we're going to have additional costs for mobilization, demobilization, and mobilization once again, along with any other costs that are related to weather-related or delay of the work. Or if we are saying no, stay on schedule, what they'll have to do is wait out quite some time for the subgrade to dry out. And then to stabilize it, they'll probably have to add lime to it, lime treat the soil so that it'll stabilize. But then again, you're running another risk again of getting additional rainfall and having to continue to go through these types of expenses. PG&E has not completed the engineering of the common trench for that area. So they're not going to be able to complete that until sometime in January, and then it goes to construction scheduling. That is also going to have another 4 to 6 week delay. So we feel that we recommend that their request be granted for them to delay the work, pull out, and come back when they'll be able to continue the work in fair weather.
If they're requesting this, why would they charge us to take their equipment out and put it back in again?
We would negotiate that. I think we have leverage. If they really want to get out, I would say in the
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. If they want to get out, why should we pay for it?
Provided you don't charge us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a request to the city manager, and he's going to be dealing with them on that.
So we're talking about, now is L Street from Merced Street to Inyo, is it paved or is it still?
L Street, the only work done on L Street by Merced was was the intersection where you had that
Yeah.
that valley
And they're not
gutter
doing
that was
anything on the
very
rest of
deep.
the street?
No, all they did was remove that valley gutter, added a manhole there to the storm drain, put in 2 drop inlets for storm water, and just widened the mouth of that intersection.
Oh, I thought they were doing that the same as M Street.
No, they're not.
Gutter and all that,
No,
okay.
that's the extent of the work there.
Okay, so it's still, if we let them pull out, it's still available, I mean, all of the businesses, you can get to them and,
Everything is fine on L and M Street.
okay.
That they were able to, because they didn't have any of those delays, they were able to finish most of the work other than, like I mentioned, the final raising the grade of manholes and water valves and a few little things as such. But the main delay is out at in the industrial park area.
So we're talking May, June at least?
No, I would say more like March, April.
Because it still rains in March and April
Oh,
sometimes.
yeah, but pretty much I think
Okay.
You do have quite a few dry weather days.
Ernie and I can have a bet.
Weather bet.
Any other questions?
Not just the L and Merced, the truck drivers are very happy. Now
Oh,
that
yes.
mean dip has been taken out. No more scrape trucks, scrape roads, and
Right.
that one's real good. Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you.
Jim, did you have anything else? Okay. I have some city council members. Dave?
Just to thank everyone that helped out with the ringing of the bells and getting the food stuff together. It just totally amazes me every year to see the amount of food and toys that we collect here in Newman. And it's all been distributed over the weekend. And I'd like to mention all the people's names, but I know I'd leave some out, so I just won't. Just everybody that helped, I want to thank and wish everyone a happy holiday. That's it.
Thank you, Dave. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With this being our last meeting of the year, I just had a couple of summary comments, and part of my comments are based on some of the things I was hearing from staff. One of the things that Jim mentioned was with us looking more conservatively in the things that we do. And I think some of the things that were touched on is a little bit of unfinished business. And I'm looking forward to the new year of getting some major tasks, things that I see as major tasks, completed. In particular, since we just finished up with the L&M Street project, which I really want to make mention of how we covered that with RDA money funds to do this right, which is a couple of $1 million project that, given the circumstances of delays, there were two conglomerates mentioned. You mentioned SBC with them wanting to rearrange something totally different with some of their wiring, but PG&E came up again, and you know, they're a multi-billion-dollar company that this state has had some turmoil with, even because they transferred like $3 or $4 billion to their parent company. So we're still kind of dealing with that because they're saying they only want to give us back $1 billion. We've had some dissatisfaction with them, and I brought up in a previous meeting us addressing that as a body to see maybe if we could get a little better attention. I think we should do that. I don't know if I had full compliance or concurrence with my colleagues as far as addressing that by way of a letter. I know I mentioned it. I would like to know, or I think that's something that we should do. And then I think we should stay on a steadfast mission with those improvements that we're talking about to get our industrial park up to par. We're not there. And so I'm optimistic about this new coming year. I'm positive about how the direction of our country has been going. And, you know, we're at a heightened alert. But just like David said, the day that we met here and carried on a meeting on September 11th during the tragedy, is that, you know, life keeps going on. And we have our work cut out for us. But I'm looking forward to the challenges. And I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Tim. Dave mentioned the Salvation Army. I'd like to thank Joe and Kathy Evans, who spearheaded the whole food and toy drive this last Saturday. And this is the first year I've actually been able to deliver, and it was definitely heartwarming. I tell you, seeing the kids' faces and the parents and the tears, and I really enjoyed it. But they're the spearheads, and they're the ones that had everything under control, and it was amazing how well it all went, and I commend them for it, and thank you everybody that did help, and the Rotary also, and the Newman Women's League. They really contributed a lot, and thank the community for all their help, and just wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. That's all I have. With that, we'll adjourn to closed session.